Clown editor from The Atlantic, accidentally on a text stream of Trump administration security folks. Commies oppose closing the Department of Education. Race-based policy goes to SCOTUS. This is Dr. David D. Schein with Saving America and my own take on key stories from this past week focused on politics and business. And the welcome to the party as the hypocrites are desperately trying to create a scandal since they have nothing productive to do. Clown editor from The Atlantic accidentally on a text stream of Trump administration security folks. Unless you're living under a rock, I'm sure you've heard one of the 20 versions of this story. Recently, one of the first confabs of the whole Trump security crew plus VP Vance were on a text on Signal. The discussion involved getting ready to do something that the world has needed for years, to bomb the Houthi terrorists in Yemen into history. Somehow, Jeffrey Goldberg, editor of the fading magazine The Atlantic, got looped into the text stream. He made a big deal out of how it was horrible that someone without security clearance was somehow able to get into the text stream. I do not disagree with that simple point. I do note that I was introduced to The Atlantic in high school as a literary magazine. My regular audience will not be surprised that I was advanced English in high school. I also introduced to The New Yorker as a similar magazine. Well, that was a long time ago. Today, both are regarded as mere woke trash, having sold out long ago. Given the Dems have nothing but complaints, nothing positive, the Dem liars and fools show in D.C. went into hyperdrive. And as luck would have it, security updates were scheduled before Congress at this time. So Signalgate was born. There have been calls by the Dems for the resignation of Mike Waltz as the national security advisor. Trump intelligently said Waltz learned his lesson and let's move on. That is the correct answer. Lost in all this talking is the bombing of the Houthis, which was the subject of the test, was very successful. And I think this was the third or fourth consecutive night that they were leveling that part of Yemen to get rid of this scourge of the earth. Now, the security team that was on that call said there were no confidential details discussed before Goldberg. I take their word for that, but I would say that there was more discussed than I would like to have exposed to someone like Goldberg. Certainly, given Trump's public announcement of the planned bombing and other recent bombing runs, nothing stunning was discussed here. Goldberg, of course, didn't like being spanked, so he has exaggerated the level of detail he is privy to. I note that I'm unable to read specifically what he wrote since it's behind a paywall, and I surely won't give a penny to The Atlantic. As I've already said in prior webcasts, the Trump team is a credit to the United States. The worst person in his new administration leadership team is far better than the best member of the Biden-Harris administration. So no, I do not consider that the sky is falling. While unhappy, I am more unhappy with the ridiculous time-wasting show that has been brought about by the Dems. What nobody has said so far, why would the phone number of this clown Goldberg have been available to the security team to even invite him to this chat? I cannot imagine why his number was anywhere around. In fact, I believe this sounds like the famous leak from 2 years ago of the abortion decision at the Supreme Court. I want to know how Goldberg's phone number was even in the system. That should be the real question here. Here's my analysis on punishment. Hillary Clinton had a reported 65,000 emails sent from her home computer server. This was a massive and deliberate security violation. If you will imprison her for the rest of her life without parole, I will let you smack Mike Waltz's hand for an error during his first couple weeks on the job. FMCS fraud highlighted. The level of fraud and waste at the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service is stunning and makes some of the early reports of waste by the federal government pale in comparison. The details indicate that employees openly admitted that they did nothing. Vast sums were spent on luxurious offices. I always thought this was an important operation in dealing with national union strikes, but apparently that was not true. This incredible disclosure by itself shows that the Dems protesting the Doge cleanup operation are on the wrong side of history. Speaking as just one taxpayer, I want not only terminations, but I want investigations into possible criminal charges. Commies oppose the Department of Education closing. As a professional educator, some of my audience might be surprised that I support closing the Department of Education. Major protests are by the teachers' unions, not the overtaxed and underserved taxpayers. Note that. First, education is a responsibility of parents and local schools. Failed President Jimmy Carter created the department as a throwaway to the unions. Second, many reports have documented that American student levels are now near the bottom of all developed countries. Some whole school districts have no students meeting education standards. So if that was the purpose of the DOE, it has failed on a massive scale. Time to tell the schools to dump woke and DEI and get back to the 3 R's. Third, the few DOE operations of merit can be assigned to other departments like Treasury and the Small Business Administration. I'm okay with targeted support for poor school districts, but consider that there are still states administration between Uncle Sam and these local districts. Pell Grants and similar elite programs like that might even go to the State Department. Think about that. I have a great college students. I asked my class of 35 seniors last week how many had read the great American classic Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. Not a single student out of 35. Classics like this were required reading when I was in high school. Time to get back to basics like reading and writing real material. The real Chinese threat to the Panama Canal. I want to credit Virginia Allen of the Daily Signal for a fascinating and important article on the Chinese threat to the Panama Canal. Miss Allen's piece credited Hot Zone podcaster, former military member, and someone who actually lives in Panama, Chuck Holton, for his critical evaluation of the threat. Recently, there's been a lot of publicity about China locating operations at each end of the Panama Canal, and this is how it presents a direct threat to American security. Remember that failed President Carter gave the canal away during his administration. However, just controlling the software that runs the canal could have far more devastating results. I think this is an important issue for U.S. throughout the world. I was alerted to this mega threat a few years ago when I learned that many of the cranes that operate in major ports throughout the U.S. came from China. That includes the computerized operating systems. So China could shut down our ports. As part of our Saving America series, I called on the appropriate powers to make sure these systems are converted to U.S. secure systems. Allen's article notes that on average, 36 to 38 ships traverse the canal each day, including U.S. Navy ships. Of the civilian ships, most are bound for U.S. ports, but not all are U.S. flag vessels. A shutdown of the canal would have a major impact on U.S. shipping, including, importantly, the U.S. Navy. Texas Governor Abbott responds to Dem lawmakers' hateful remarks. The latest scumball Dem to gain publicity for stupidity is Texas Representative Jasmine Crockett. She doubled down on stupid by referring to Texas Governor Abbott, who has been in a wheelchair for about 40 years, as Governor Hot Wheels. She said this at a recent Human Rights Campaign dinner. Abbott said that he found the remark disrespectful. As a typical out-of-touch Dem, she claimed it was because he wants to block illegals from entering the U.S., not his disability. Then, when Abbott's supporters called her out, she attacked them, not apologizing for her own insensitivity about human rights. Race-based policy goes to SCOTUS. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 was passed to protect the rights of minority voters throughout the states. It was originally targeted at the vestiges of the Jim Crow laws in the Democrat-controlled South. It also banned the poll tax, another tool the Dems used to keep blacks from voting. However, not everything has been smooth. In an effort to provide more representation for minorities, states have gerrymandered many congressional districts to create black districts. These attempts have repeatedly been brought before the courts. In fact, I have a personal friend who was an expert who testified in such cases over the years. About 20 years ago, this backfired in the Houston area when a so-called black district was won by a white Democrat, not a black one. Currently, there is a battle brewing at the effort to create a second predominantly black district in Louisiana. That state is approximately 30% African American. Unbelievably, this is now before SCOTUS for the third time, this time to see if the creation of the second black district violated the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause for non-black voters. Given that this is overtly race-based, does it now violate the concept of equal protection? Given the diversity of modern society and the growth of minority representation in the Republican Party, it is time to stop showing this specific form of race preference. The Roberts Supreme Court has tended toward a balance with favoring elimination of affirmative action, but less aggressive on targeted voting districts. So right now, this looks like a toss-up. FBI agent arrested at the airport trying to leave the USA. I like it when the good guys win. In this case, somehow it's fitting that an anti-Trump FBI agent, Jonathan Boomer, got arrested at New York's JFK airport as he tried to skip out of the USA. He has been charged with leaking confidential information. Reportedly, he copied and released over 100 confidential files. He was not in custody since he was out on $100,000 bail. Glad someone was paying attention and caught him before he could leave the U.S. More climate change hypocrisy. This was inspired by a report by the BBC. So the short version is that in November, there is going to be a huge world climate change summit called COP30. It will be held in the Brazilian city of Belém. This is a historic city in northern Brazil that is considered the gateway to the Amazon. It has a population of about 1.3 million, with about 2.5 million in the metro area. Incredibly, it is projected as many as 50,000 people would attend this summit in this Brazilian city. So they are demolishing a swath of the Amazon rainforest to build a 4-lane highway. This could impact tens of thousands of acres, according to the BBC report. As is often asked by us realists, is this a sensible way to even review the issue of climate change? The rainforest does absorb carbon for the world, of course, but I don't think 4-lane highways do the same trick. This is Dr. David D. Schein. Thanks for joining me for this special edition of Saving America. Remember, a new Saving America show is aired on the Brushwood Media Network every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Listen on any of the 16 network stations, Apple or Google mobile app, Apple CarPlay, TuneIn, Smart Speaker, and all smart TVs. Find more information at the brushwoodmedianetwork.com. Please be sure to join us each week. We welcome and love your feedback from our growing audience.